And all join palms. Repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you? I already know the answer to this, but what brings you here? That guy.
Me or him?
I said, what brings you here?
He told me about it.
What did he tell you?
Not much.
Not much. That sounds about right. That's safer that way, you know? Well, I'm glad you're here. Anyone else here for the first time want to share why? Yeah, I see a hand.
Curiosity,
About?
new ways of thinking, different beliefs, different capacities.
What's wrong with your old ways of thinking and beliefs and capacities?
I think they could just use a dusting off.
Yeah.
You know, spring cleaning.
A spring cleaning.
Yeah.
That's great. There's a teaching that when the Buddha, his name was Siddhartha Gautama, was just a dude who lived 2,500 years ago. And at the moment they say he had his awakening, where it was him sitting under a Bodhi tree in India for 21 days and saying, I'm not moving until I figure out why we suffer. There are seats and chairs up here if you're coming in and want to take them. You don't all have to pile in the back. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I just saw an image going that way. The story is that at that moment that he figured it all out, his thought was, well, this is great, but nobody's going to get this stuff. Nobody's going to understand it. Nobody's definitely going to do it. Whatever the stuff is he figured out. And the teaching is that Brahma, the Hindu god, came down and said to Siddhartha, there are people with little dust in their eye. Go teach them. So when you shared that, it made me think of that kind of brushing off that, we have a little bit of dust in our eyes, and that dust in Buddhism is known as greed, anger, and ignorance, the things that cause our suffering. And if we just can kind of brush that off a little bit, then that kindness and compassion can awaken. So, yeah, glad you're here. Thanks. Anybody else here for the first time want to share why? Sure.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. I've been exploring spirituality on my own and was just looking for a little bit of community and wanted to experience it.
Nice. Well, we're glad you're here. This community's all right. Might be a little biased, but it just depends on which day, So Saturdays are usually all right. So glad you're here. To everybody joining us virtually, welcome. Thanks for being here. Feel free as you are to chime in, say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. For those who might be new, nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. However you're seated, if you're on a chair or bench or whatever you're seated in, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you need to move during meditation, just move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means your leg hurts or you have an itch or whatever it is. Most important with this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments of the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in, or where you think you're going. Your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this isn't going to fix that. This helps you become aware of why your life is that way, so you can then actually make changes in your life. This is direct perception into the present moment, and very often the present moment is incredibly difficult, painful, complicated, confusing. That's life. This is learning to be with life as it arises. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they do this, wishing they would do that. We spend so much time pointing fingers and blaming everybody else for all of our problems. Sure, other people had an impact on us, but how are we responding to that? In the actual moment of things occurring and 30 years later, how are we responding to the things that arise in our lives? And how many of those things are we still carrying with us and still angry about and still unwilling to let go of? Because we just like having an excuse for why we have so many problems. This practice is a mirror. That's it. It's helping you reflect back on your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And if you want less stress, less anger, less anxiety, less sadness, less depression, then it starts with a meditation practice which allows you the space, in theory, to watch your mind, to see what it does. Your mind causes your suffering. Nobody else has that power and control over you. People do things, terrible things, horrific things, disgusting things, tragic things. But most of the things that annoy you and bother you all day long are not those things. They're the little things that trigger you, that set you off, that make you angry, that put you in a situation of where you're complaining all day long, which people are so happy to hear you complain. So it's a good thing we have that going for us. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, whatever you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our time this morning, and I'll open up to questions. And again, to those joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen, so feel free to type in thoughts or questions, and I'll do my best to respond to those online as well. So, questions?
Is it common to get extremely dizzy during meditation? Like, to realize?
So the question was, and I'll repeat questions mainly for those joining virtually, but the question was, if I heard you correctly, is it common to get incredibly or extremely dizzy when you open your eyes after meditation? During meditation. So here's the thing, whether it's common or not doesn't matter. Let's start with that. My first master always said, instead of looking for answers for questions, rephrase how you ask questions. So what I'm hearing you say is you got completely dizzy during meditation, right? Whether that happens to a million other people or nobody, doesn't really matter. It's happening to you, yeah. What was it like? Uncomfortable. And what did you do?
Opened my eyes.
And was the dizziness gone?
A little bit.
Well, there you go. Problem solved. Yeah. There's a great Zen teaching says, when hungry, eat, when tired, sleep. Right? I don't know if that's common for people. It happened for you in this moment. You recognized it, you made an adjustment, and you can explore it. And next time you do meditation, see if it happens again. Are you new to meditation, or do you have a
Fairly new.
Fairly new. So fairly new, like you've done it 3 times, doing it for 6 months. What's fairly new?
I've done yoga.
Lots of people do yoga. Question was about meditation, not yoga.
I just feel like it's easy.
Okay. Okay. And when you do meditation over this last year, do you normally get dizzy when you close your eyes? Okay. So my suggestion would be, when you do meditation, don't close your eyes. All right. So the Zen practice specifically for me, and that's not necessarily the practice that I introduce or share, but it's what I was always trained in and what I do even sitting here. My eyes are not closed during the practice. They're open. Now, I'm not sitting here like looking around at everybody. That'd be weird. But try this with me. You can all try this. So everybody close your eyes for a minute. And now open them just slightly to where you're looking off the edge of your nose. Not at your nose, you'll get dizzy, but you should be about 1 to 2 feet in front of you. So where you're sitting at right there, you're probably going to be looking at like the back of the chair, bottom of the chair, and just hold your attention there. So open to where they're not about to close, but also not to where they're wide open and you're looking around. Just hold your attention there and just take a few breaths. Did that get you dizzy? No. How do we live our lives? Eyes open or eyes closed? Open. Much better to train your mind to be still and steady with their eyes open. So I would suggest trying that practice for a while. I'm definitely not a medical professional, so if there's stuff going on, dizziness, headaches, whatever, then, I would get that checked out. But yeah. So I'm always happy to never answer a question. Other questions? And I should add on the yoga piece that yoga is a form of meditation, definitely. It's a moving meditation. Initially it was really done to prepare yourself physically for then a seated meditation practice. So yoga, beautiful practice, incredibly important, healthy, but also very different than just seated still meditation. And yoga can absolutely be a meditative practice if we are fully focused on in-breath, out-breath, postures, things like that. And it can also not be a meditation depending upon where the mind is at, but that's so different than walking or eating or drinking coffee. Everything can be a meditation or it cannot be depending upon the nature of your mind. So, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
you talk a little bit about the Buddhist thought on just the beginning of this whole existence and consciousness? Where
Yeah, let me just sum that up for you.
you got a minute.
I got 2 minutes to sum up the Buddhist thought on the nature of our existence and consciousness. Yeah, it's actually really simple, truly. There's a great 4th century Buddhist philosopher, Nagarjuna, right? Nagarjuna. And there's a great text called Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. So interestingly enough, my formal introduction to Buddhist practice, 2003, I'd been at the temple all of 2 weeks. This is 20 years ago, and I joined a book study at the temple reading Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. So 2 weeks in, I was into that, right? And the most beautiful teaching that has stuck with me to this day from that was no beginning, no end. Solves that.
Zen.
Right? No beginning, no end. And I think that the part about consciousness is important as well. The Buddha taught what's called alaya vijnana, which is storehouse consciousness, is that our karma, and karma, for those who don't know, karma is not what goes around comes around. Karma is not getting what you deserve. Karma is not, well, they did bad things, so they're going to get bad things. I don't know why we still think that, because you ever done bad things and had good things happen to you? You ever done good things and had bad things happen to you? So this whole idea of getting with karma it's like Western folks have with the best way of ruining these teachings. And we make karma this selfish thing about it's all about us. Karma is not what we get, it's what we give. Karma literally means action. And the Buddha taught that we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. So karma is what we bring into the world. Think about shooting pool. If you ever play pool and you have the cue ball, hits the rack, and every ball goes into a different direction. Our entire lives, we are that cue ball, and that's it. Every person, place, and thing that we encounter, we leave an impact. So the practice is being mindful of our own karma, what we think, what we say, and what we do, because that leaves an impact. And what that does is that creates our consciousness. That is our consciousness. Everything we think, we say, and we do, that's our consciousness. That's what we store. All of our actions, all of our thoughts, all of our words. No beginning, no end. So ultimately in Buddhist teachings, the depth of it, right? I know a lot of people come into Buddhism and they're just I just want to be happy. I want to be less stressed. I want everyone just to shut up and do what I want. If we can all do that, we're good. But very often this, really what I think is very fundamental teachings of the Buddha that gets discounted is that the Buddha wasn't teaching this practice so we could all be happy. I know that might sound like a shock to people because it might come across as if happiness is a bad thing. It's not. But happiness is a side effect, a byproduct of what? Letting go of self, letting go of ego, letting go of craving, letting go of attachments, letting go of desire, all these things that cause our suffering. The side effect is we feel okay. The Dalai Lama's book, The Art of Happiness, was a #1 seller, but he is the poster child in the face of Buddhism, for the most part, one of, titled Art of Happiness. And millions of Americans pick up that book because we're all doing what? Seeking, craving, desiring, searching for happiness. Don't seek it, don't crave it, don't desire it, don't search for it. Look at what stops you from being happy. Right? And so the Buddha taught all of this and said that we are just physical forms, physical bodies, that our consciousness that has been around endless time and will be around endless time currently sits in this physical body. But we think that this consciousness in this physical form, that's permanent, that's us. We build ourselves a name, a label, an ego, an identity. We spend our entire lives defending it, proving it, fighting over it. It's all just temporary. No beginning, no end. So, a little longer than 2 minutes, but hopefully that sums it up. Yeah. And the other thing that's important also is that, sure, there's all these teachings on that, but where we come from, even if we knew the answer to that, and where we're going, even if we knew the answer to that, so what? You still got to walk out of here and go get lunch and figure out what you're doing the rest of your day. And what are you going to do in those moments? That's what's important, So it's fun to ponder and read all that kind of stuff. But then at the end of the day, we got to walk outside and say, am I going to be nice to people? Or am I going to be pissed off at everyone? Am I going to be compassionate and understanding and forgiving? Or am I going to be filled with anger and hatred and rage? Those are the real questions to ask ourselves.
Did he have the cosmology?
Did he have, what do you mean by did he have
What's
one?
his concept of?
Yeah.
Of,
Yes, but it wasn't his. What I mean by that is he was raised in India 500 years before Christ. So you had Indian cosmology, and you had world systems, and you had kalpas, which were endless moments of time. All that stuff was there. I spent about 2 hours reading it and realized I don't ever need to know any of this stuff because it's an absolute waste of my time. So yes, it was all, he was teaching in a way that was already embedded into the culture. They all believed in rebirth.
More from Hinduism.
From him, exactly. So, but that's why I asked about, did he have his? It wasn't like he sat down and made it up. He was just some dude, he wasn't like some god that said, I am Brahma and this is how it is. No, he was just some dude who said, in essence, for 45 years and 84,000 ways, go be nice to yourself and others. Yeah. So it's all there. It's fun to read about, just Google Buddhism world systems, Indian cosmology. It's all there. Endless cycles of rebirth. How many of you came here because you wanted to make sure you were born into a good next life and that you don't go into one of the hell realms? Anybody here for that? We're not. One half a hand in the back, and that's only because you've been stuck listening to me for 10 years. So, yeah, it's all there. Other question? Benton. Oh, man, a great question. So Benton asks, what are some of the main takeaways from Everything Everywhere All at Once? Can we all on the count of three say, hi, Benton? 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Benton.
We missed you. We love you. The funny thing is when I first saw the title, before I saw the movie, I mean, just the title, that's it. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know that there's any more I can say about what to take away from it other than what the title actually is. That's it. I wish you were here because then you could actually tell us what your main takeaways were from it. Oh, we got 3 little smiley face, 3 hearted emojis, just so you know, back from Ben. Yeah, what a great and strange film. Yeah. Other questions?
Good question.
What's that?
I have another part
Yeah.
of that question from that movie, because that's when I'm doing some research in quantum and consciousness. That's why I asked you.
Yeah.
And it's just the correlation between Buddhism and consciousness and quantum and that movie are really pretty,
Yeah.
alike.
Very alike, very strong, and I'm the worst person to ask about that stuff because, like I said, I read about it for 2 hours and said, okay, I get it, and I'm going to go back to stop trying to be an asshole. That's the truth. I don't spend any moments of time studying consciousness, quantum stuff, Einstein, how it all correlates. Like, I'm with you. I love you. I support you. Go to it, study it, research it, prove it. I'm just working on being nice.
But that's just another way of studying it.
Yeah, for you, apparently, yes.
For you.
Not for me, because I don't understand any of it. So, But I appreciate the insight. Yeah, I just don't spend time there at all. It's hard enough to just be nice to people all day long. It's hard enough to forgive self and others. It's hard enough to be compassionate. If I could intellectually understand that we're just like all these little particles floating through space and time, then I would go that route, but I can't. I stopped understanding science in about the 6th grade. After I saw like water change colors, I was like, I don't get this stuff. So I just, yeah. Other questions?
You spoke about closing the gap between how you feel during and after meditation and normal everyday life. So my question is, during normal everyday life, how do we feel the way we do when we meditate?
Yes. So first off, kind of my comment earlier about the question, you referred to normal everyday life as different from your meditation practice. And I get it, you're pulling probably from what I said, right? About notice how you feel now compared to how you typically feel. But what I first want you to recognize is that you doing that meditation practice, that was no different than normal everyday life. Were you there doing the meditation?
Yes.
And were you in the places that you're referring to as your normal everyday life?
Not exactly.
No. You ever watch Judge Judy? No, I'm serious. She always says, you don't know where I'm going with this, right? So my question, what's your name?
Jamie.
Jamie, were you here physically when we were doing the meditation?
Yes.
And in what you're calling your normal everyday life, are you there physically?
Yes.
Okay. Was your mind here in what you're referring to as the meditation?
Yes.
And is your mind in also the places that you're referring to as your normal everyday life?
Yes.
They're no different. I get your question, we'll get to it, but this first part is critical because whatever answer I would give you a response won't work unless you truly understand the first part that I'm talking about, which is you, Jamie, sat here, and let me ask you this, how did you feel after meditation?
At peace.
At peace. Was this your first time ever doing meditation?
No.
Okay. You've done it for a while or?
Yes.
Okay. So after meditation, you felt at peace. During what you're referring to as your normal everyday life, how do you feel?
It varies depending on the outer circumstances.
Say that again, the last part, depending upon what?
The outer
Circumstances. And what are the outer circumstances doing to you?
I guess they're actually not doing anything. But I'm observing them and being affected by them.
Okay. I love when people answer their own questions. You're observing them and being affected by them. What did you just do during the meditation practice to feel at peace? Because you got outer stuff here. I mean, you're surrounded by, you think these are all nice people? I know a lot of them. We're all here because we're not that way, right? You're not surrounded by these like fully enlightened beings. People that are perfectly happy and at peace and nice to everybody all day long typically don't show up to places like this. The people that are sitting in this room are the same people that piss you off out there. They're the ones that cut you off in traffic. They're the ones that get mad at you during customer service stuff. They're the ones that, make your lattes the wrong way. These are them. But you responded peacefully for 20 minutes. Amazing. You chose that response, right? And what response are you choosing out there and what you're calling your normal life? Not the same one. What I want you to understand first and foremost is that you have that power and ability to choose your response to the external situation. And the real response to kind of, if there is an answer to it, is the question is, how do I do this consistently out there? Right? Practice. You ever trained for anything in your life? You ever run a marathon or study for some big test? Have you run a marathon?
No, not very.
Okay, but train for something?
Many things, yeah.
Is training easy?
No.
No. And are you progressing as you train and getting better at whatever you're training or studying for?
Yeah.
This is the same thing. The more you practice just being still, quiet, it doesn't have to be here. I mean, I'm glad you're here, but it's not just like coming here once a week for an hour. It's every single day practicing this. By practicing, meaning sitting still quietly and breathing. You know, if I'm in a room of 100 people and I say, how many of you have done meditation? I just was with a group the other day. You know, you'll get 70 hands that go up and say, oh, I've done meditation. And then I say, how many of you do it every day? Every hand goes down. So if we want to replicate what you felt here, you have to practice that. You have to know that that is available to you at all times. But when people out there do all the things that we don't like, right? We don't have quick access to the emotion of peace. It becomes a trigger and it sends us into the emotions that we're used to having, which is filled with, you know, defense mechanisms and, you know, quick responses. Does that make sense so far? Yeah.
So is the key of meditation, we're focusing our attention on our bodies, or there's some, focusing is important to meditation. So during quote unquote normal life, is it the same objective to focus our attention and maintain some sort of detachment from our ego so we can observe ourselves? Is that what we're trying to build up?
In essence, yes. Instead of detach, one of the Buddhist teachings is non-attachment. Instead of saying, because detach is like a cut off. But then what's interesting is you said, to me at least, when I hear detach, I think of cutting off. But then you also mentioned observing. So yes, what we're working on doing during seated meditation is becoming the observer, right? We are not a person we're not an angry person. We're a person that is experiencing anger. And then that anger can be acted upon. When we observe that emotion in meditation, or whatever it might be, we don't act on it, right? During the 20 minutes of meditation, you had a million thoughts, right? You know, maybe some pleasant, as Buddha called them, unpleasant, and some neutral. But what did you do for those 20 minutes with all of those thoughts and emotions? Nothing. You just let them go. You just sat. You know, if you had an angry thought or a sad thought, you didn't get up and like punch a wall or yell at anybody. At least not that I heard or saw, right? So it's the same thing in our everyday normal life out there. People are going to do things that are going to trigger you. And the more you train being the observer of the emotion, you can say, oh yeah, that's the anger. Take a couple deep breaths, recognize the impermanence of all phenomena, meaning that will pass, right? There's a great acronym called SOBER with meditation. So when something happens, triggers you, stop. Just stop for a moment, right? Observe, and this all happens really quickly, but just stop. And then observe. What's going on? I'm getting angry. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting irritated. Then breathe. Take a few deep breaths. And then expand. Expand meaning expand to recognize that your life is so much greater than that one moment that is triggering you. And then respond. And see how you respond. And see if how you're responding is different from how you typically would respond. And in most cases, if we've been triggered and we see anger and we don't act on it immediately, we take some deep breaths and we allow ourselves to kind of simmer down a little bit, our response might be a little gentler. So yeah, you're 100%. You know, my experience with what you said is to become the observer. But we have to create that space to be the observer. Where normally we're just like, you know, somebody cuts us off. Are you like a road rage driver? No.
I used to.
Used to be.
Meditate, so.
Before you meditate. See, so, well, we all thank you, right? But see, so it's a practice, it's a routine. And you know, I wish this stuff was like a quick fix, like, okay, I'm going to do this for 3 weeks. I'm going to read the exact text of teaching, and then I'm going to have it solved. We've been this way our whole lives. So if we've been whatever type of person for many years, it's going to take a long time to, you know, change that. I mean, it could be immediate, but let's be real. You know? So hope that helps.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I understand that like most of the things that perturb me are pretty silly, but what should I do when it is a life or death matter that is triggering me? I don't know what to do with that.
You say, what was the last part? You don't know what to
I
do?
don't know what to do with, when it is.
Yeah.
Like, literally life or death.
Yeah, I mean, there are, and I, you know, for 20 plus years worked with both sides, people who've murdered, people who've raped, I've been doing prison work over 20 years, so I've worked with people who've done extreme things. I've also been on the other side of working with people who've been, experience of domestic violence, abuse, tremendous trauma. And so that's why I really don't take light the serious traumatic things that do occur and happen in our lives. But just to kind of rephrase what you were saying, but I also recognize that a majority of our time throughout the day, it's the little things. But what you're talking about is what do we do when it is life or death situations, right? That are triggering us. Be careful, protect yourself, disengage, run. There's no Buddhist practice that says, well, I'm going to not attach to you abusing me. Non-attachment, love, and compassion. If somebody's punching me, the most compassionate thing I can do? Run away. Because then they're not punching me anymore. There's no Buddhist teaching that says stay in an unhealthy, dangerous, toxic environment or relationship. We all have our limits. Right? Yes, in any sort of relationship, friendship, family, intimate relationships, whatever it might be, there is, I think, with Buddhist teachings, an opportunity to open the heart, open the mind, to continue to work, to process, to be more loving, more caring, more understanding. And then there's kind of a threshold where it says, no, this is unhealthy, this is dangerous, this is toxic, and I need to remove myself. So there's not always like some textbook Buddhist teaching that we can drop on domestic violence. Get out. That's my best understanding of how to use the Buddhist teachings, which is wisdom and compassion. Those are the two wings of Buddhist teachings, wisdom and compassion. And very often compassion can be misunderstood, I think, or used or practiced in unhealthy ways that are not wise. Because if somebody is abusing us and we say, well, I'm just going to have compassion for them while they abuse me, there's no wisdom there at all. That's ignorance. But very often what comes up in these situations is fear. Fear of staying. And I don't even want to know your details. I'm just running on this rant and tangent, not even applying it to you, right? But you're hopefully all smart enough to pull whatever you can from this and whatever situations any of you may be in. But there's no wisdom in staying in abusive situations, dangerous situations. It's not compassionate to stay there and allow somebody to abuse us. We must remove ourselves from those situations and be safe at all costs. So, yeah. I don't know if that helps at all, but
Sure, no, definitely.
yeah, sure. Any other, we'll do one more question, thought, if anybody wants to share. Yeah.
I've pissed off a lot of people recently.
Oh, recently? I just wanted to announce that to everybody.
And, it's karma, right? I did something, I said something, I called something out. And so, my question is about my responsibility to that situation.
Yeah. See, Jamie, I told you the people here, man, you gotta look out. Kathy here's one of the worst, is to avoid.
Trying to black hammer? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So, are you asking, so your question of you've pissed off a lot of people recently, that's your karma, your actions is what you've caused, and you're asking what is your responsibility now to that situation? In essence, like how do you fix it, or what do you do to resolve it, or is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In many cases, nothing. And in some cases, everything. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah.
Right, everything.
I didn't want to say the exact title wrong. I wasn't clear in my head at that moment. I think that, my first master used to always say when it came to to use kind of a Western word, repentance, things that we've done wrong, asking for forgiveness, right? We would always say, that sometimes the person, they're over it. And just because we're feeling bad about what we did, 20 years later, we got all Buddhist and decided to be a nice person. They don't want to hear from us 20 years later. They're probably over it. Now, I know that you said recently, so this is a fresh situation. But I think the same thing applies potentially, that whatever actions you took that caused whatever responses, maybe they're perfectly okay without you doing anything, because maybe what you're going to do would only just make it worse. And maybe what you're trying to do is actually feel better. I wish you could have seen her face. She said yes. Someone came in here, you may have heard me share this over the years, but years ago, it was somebody sitting right here, and she said her wife just dropped her off, and she said she was really angry. And I said, why? And she said, because my wife's really angry at me. And I said, did you do something to upset her, to hurt her? And she said, yes. And her question was around how she could feel better. I'm like, wait, so let me understand this. You caused her pain, and you're asking me a question about how you can feel better. Not trying to draw a parallel here, but sometimes the best thing we can do in those situations, also karmically, the second thing he always said was vow to not do it again. And apologize was the third thing, to someone else, if not appropriate to that person. So they don't want to hear from you. Recognize what you did was not kind and gentle. Obviously, you have, or you wouldn't be asking this question. You realize that it wasn't with a clear mind, clear intention, pure heart, right? Whatever was ego or was wrapped up in it. You realize that's the case. The second thing is to apologize to somebody. And then the third thing is to vow to not do it again. And let that karma play out. Let them, we can't always try to manipulate and fix everybody else's stuff. Or we never can. We can try, we pretend we can. But, sometimes you have to say, I screwed up. I've said that a lot. It's just part of this practice.
Yep, I've said it.
Yeah, and then you sit with that and you feel terrible. You feel the guilt, you feel the shame, but not that's destructive towards yourself. So my advice to you also is to recognize all the things I just said, but to then have some self-compassion and say, you're just human. You know what you did was wrong. You shouldn't have done it, but you're not going to hate yourself for the next 3 years because of it. Because then you're just going to make more mistakes, because that self-hatred and self-judgment and lack of self-compassion is really detrimental to our health and well-being. So, yeah.
Can I follow up?
Sure.
So it's complicated, of course, because the substance is one thing and the form is another. And so the form was really unclean and hurtful. The substance I sort of have to stand behind.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so in those situations, it's not necessarily about whether you were right or wrong.
Right.
Whether you could still stand by what you said and did and still feel that that was appropriate, potentially. Again, I don't know the details, and I'm better off not. But that doesn't change the outcome.
Right.
Even if you stand by what you believe in, and you would do it the same way again, it doesn't change what's triggering this question.
Yeah, right.
They still feel how they still feel, and you still feel how you still feel.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just how it rolls. Yeah. So.
Thank you for this space. It's so helpful.
Yeah, always. So we'll join palms and close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace and free from suffering. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a couple quick announcements before you head out. I just want to share Nancy's comment. She said the end of Everything Everywhere All at Once, the mom and daughter reconcile. And then she says, be kind. So thanks, Nancy. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple about 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhism and put it into terms that hopefully are helpful to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. We have a large recovery sangha, so anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything for that matter, meets a handful of times a week. Family group once a month, and always something fun going on. Next Sunday, so a week from tomorrow, we have a special guest. It was initially March 12th. It got pushed back to the 26th. But we used to do pre-pandemic. We had a kind of a special guest program, usually about once a month. We had different Tibetan lamas or monks or nuns or Zen priests, whoever it was, came in and taught. And lots of things changed. We closed for 18 months and blah, blah, blah. But so we're bringing that stuff slowly back as well. So next Sunday, we have a Tibetan lama. He'll be here to teach, 1 o'clock. It's as free as everything else we do, so just show up. There's a flyer on the door wall out there somewhere. And then we have a social sangha crew. Eric, raise your hand. Eric, if you're interested, talk to Eric after. They're going to be meeting prior to that on Sunday down the street. They're just going to gather for some coffee or, just to hang out a little bit. If anybody's interested in that, just talk to Eric, and there's info on the website as well. Appreciate y'all being here. I am looking for 3 people that want to spend about 20-30 minutes. And we have a really new push lawnmower that's right out there, and some grass about this tall right up against the building that we want to pull out. So if there's like 3 or 4 people that want to spend about 20-30 minutes being of service and actually helping this space, please let me know, or just meet right outside, and I'll show you how to start the push lawnmower. So thanks.